like an inescapable fact. And if there aren't trans brains, then we need to work on some other way to help these people, basically. But it seems like we're running into that. We're running into that wall again because, like,
no.
No?
You gave me a loophole.
What was that?
That there are some people who, if their brains don't match their bodies, could find that a beautiful, fun, interesting thing, but does not necessarily make you want to die.
Well, sure, but I mean, like,
That
to
if you
be
woke up as a woman tomorrow, you would not experience stomach churning, life-ending dysphoria. You would just be like, oh, this is interesting. And that, so even if trans people's brains are in the wrong bodies, that does not necessarily need to lead to surgery, hormones, or suicidality.
Yeah, and this is true. And most, so I don't know how familiar with this concept, and maybe this sounds like I'm making stuff up, but I think most trans people would agree with that as well, because you have, this is why being trans is not considered the mental illness, but rather gender dysphoria is considered the mental illness. And there are trans people that don't have that dysphoria. Like, they're trans and their body doesn't match their brain, but they don't have like a severely horrible feeling about it, that it's just like kind of like a fact of their world, and these people might not find it necessary to transition or something, right?
Okay, so yes, so if you, yeah, I think that's fine then. Then if they get surgery, then I think it's electives, or it's basically plastic surgery.
Yeah, basically cosmetic surgery.
Fun.
Yeah.
Wait, so what's there? What am I supposed to argue about? You're saying,
well,
you're
so
saying
I understand that there are some people that only do it for cosmetic reasons, and we can both acknowledge that those people might exist. And
so the dysphoria itself is not caused by being in the wrong body, if that's even possible.
Yeah, the dysphoria seems to stem from a huge
attachment
sure.
to your gender identity.
But
and
until
that happens with cis people as well.
But until we've actually like got any data or any methodology by which to remove that attachment, it just seems to be too big an ask to tell a group of people that are like killing themselves at unbelievably high rates to say like, well, hold on, chill while we fix society, and then you can figure it. You know.
I think the suicidality also comes first. I think that's another reason I'm more comfortable saying this, is that I think that if you want to end your life and you want to kill yourself, a complete wipe of your identity and name and how everybody talks to you seems like a kind of, I'm not going to kill myself, I'm going to do this instead.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. At some point, we're going to start bumping into empirical stuff, but I don't think that's the normal trans experience. I don't think that it's like clinically understood that like there are people that are suicidal who then just become trans to escape their suicidality. I don't think that's the experience.
I just think this.
Okay, well,
And
yeah,
so,
but we have to contend with what is the reality. Because if what you're saying is true, then
I don't have to contend with reality. I'm not trying to get you to agree with me. I'm just explaining, because you're saying I don't feel comfortable saying to trans people, hold tight while we fix society, when the response to that might be an increase in suicidality.
Well, sure, but what I'm saying is that like, do you when I say deduction, does that mean anything to you, or deductive reasoning? Basically what I'm saying is that like, if I give you two premises, we can both agree on a conclusion. If I say all men are mortal and Socrates is a man, hopefully you and I both would agree Socrates therefore is mortal, because the conclusion must come from the premises, right? When I say deduction, I'm just saying that like conclusions naturally stem from our like premises, yeah? Yeah, so all I'm saying is that like, for some of the premises that you're giving me, if I were to accept these as true, your conclusion is inarguable. If there were a whole bunch of people that were suicidal and then they became trans,
that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just trying to explain to you why I feel the way I do. This is an emotional explanation, because you're saying you don't feel comfortable telling trans people, or you think it's immoral, but which I again still think is an emotional thing. You're saying it doesn't feel right to tell trans people sit tight while we fix society, when they're saying they're in extreme psychological distress and possibly suicidal. I'm saying if you believe, as I do, that the suicidality is next to being trans or even underneath being trans, then you won't. That's why I don't feel that it's wrong.
I understand, but like at some point, shouldn't we like check like the world to see like, does our feeling there match like the actual experience of people?
I don't know that there's really a way to check this because I don't agree with. I don't really believe in self-reporting.
Well, isn't that kind of the only, like, we do self-reporting for crime, right? Like,
I mean, self-reporting of your, who are you? What is your emotional state? Why do you do what you do? How do you feel?
well, but self-reporting is like, even medically, like even for actual medical conditions, we have to rely on self-reporting, no?
Yes, but that's self-reporting a bodily experience, which I do believe in. Like, are you in physical pain right now? Rate yourself from 1 to 10. I think that people are more reliable for that. But if you're taking somebody who intensely has a strongly desired outcome and narrative, the problem with being trans, one of the problems, is that innate in the identity is also a belief about the nature of what's happening. So like if you talk to like any other psychologically diagnosed condition, usually the person's reporting their experience, and then you take their experience, and then the clinician formulates it into
a comparable thing would be like, let's say somebody looks up like, this is what ADHD is, and then they read all the symptoms, and you're saying it's kind of like going into the doctor's office, and then you're basically reciting the symptoms that you led because you already believed that you had it, so you're always going to get diagnosed.
I mean,
with it, right?
we know that trans people on social media coach each other on what to say in order to get the hormones. Like, that's pretty, and again, understandable. Like, I would do the same thing. If I wanted the hormones, then fucking tell me what I have to say. But even beyond that, ADHD itself at its core does not involve a belief about ADHD. Being trans at its core involves a belief.
I mean,
and the belief.
I don't know if it's important, but I would disagree with that. But yeah, go ahead.
The fundamental belief that you can be in the wrong body and that you are in the wrong body. So any questionnaires or interviews done with a trans person is going to it's
tainted in that way.
They're going to answer from that frame. And so if as the interviewer I'm saying my belief is that trans people are very angry people, like incredibly angry people, who do not know how to express their anger outwardly and turn it inward. And that trans people are very sad and want to hit the eject button on their lives in some way.
What about for like trans people that there are like, historically we can find people that report feelings of like being trans before there's even like a scientific description or understanding of any of these ideas though?
I think why does that contradict what I
because I believe with you,
there isn't an existing framework to bind
for them to kind of
I don't necessarily. I do think that there's definitely a social contagion aspect, for sure. But I don't think that's kind of the core of what I'm saying. I'm saying it's if you imagine someone who cannot express anger outwards, especially to their parents or teachers or figures of authority, and turn it inwards, and that person feels trapped and bullied and just desperately wants to escape their lives, I think it is likely, or it makes sense to me, that they would arrive at the conclusion of, oh, I'm not me. I'm not this way. I'm this other person. I'm a woman, or I'm a man. That it's a desire to get out.
I understand, but like,
and I'm not saying this is provable. I'm saying I think this. So if you just accept that I think this, and I know you may not agree, then you can see why telling me, oh, but we asked them, and they said they weren't suicidal. I would say, well, yeah, they don't. Of course they're gonna say that. Like I don't think they know why they're feeling what they're feeling, and it's the job of psychology to figure that out. And I think that that psychologists, with regard to this issue, are being uncharacteristically permissive in allowing the patient to define what's happening with them when someone comes in and says, I'm getting messages from Mars, we say, oh, we have a name for that, and it's not the name that you think. We there's a lot of people like you. We have a name for all of them, and actually what you're saying is not that unique, and here's what you need to do, and here's how we're going to approach this, rather than I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but we're bumping back again into that descriptive fact of the matter, because like,
Yeah,
let's say that there were people that had that thing, but then like let's say that we started to investigate the brains of these people, and all of them had like some microscopic antenna that seemed to be only in their brains. At some point, we'd be like, well, hold on, wait, maybe there is something else here that's worth investigating.
But we haven't found that.
Well, for trans people,
we found
do
things
see...
that trans people think we found it, and schizophrenic people think that they do think they have found antennas. You don't let the fucking patient look for the proof.
Well, no, we're not talking
delusion.
about this. There's not like trans biologists are the only people saying this. Like there are regions of the brain.
A lot of them are. If you in my research of trying to find out, like, okay, who's saying this? A lot of the papers are written by trans people, but that.
It's published in peer-reviewed journals. Like I don't know what the like.
Trans reviewed journal. No, let me back up.
I don't think
I know. I think that's a joke. Okay, let me back up to this. You just accept the premise of transness more than I do, significantly more, and that I don't accept it at all, and you accept it.
Well, hold on. Wait. Hold on. That's not fair. Are you familiar with the concept of like Bayesian probability? So. Let's say basically both of us, here's like the difference, okay? So I'm starting, like, I would hope that my prior assumption is like, are trans people real or are trans people fake? And I would start at like a 50%. They could be real, they could be fake, and I will adjust my expectation of their realness or their fakeness based on the information that I get. And as I've gotten more information, so for instance, I see people willing to kill themselves over their transness. I see that historically trans people have existed before the concept of transness existed. I see that neuroscientists and neurobiologists are finding differences in brain structure between trans people and cis people. As that happens, my probability gets updated more and more. It's like, okay, maybe I started off 50-50. No, I'm like 60-40. No, I'm like 65-35. Right, it gets updated. So my only question is,
where are you now?
For trans people being like a real thing that like, now this isn't saying that they're born trans or anything like that, but like, I don't know, based on everything I see, probably like 80-20. It seems like pretty reasonable to me. It seems like there's like more and more literature that comes out that kind of like reaffirms this position. Now that's not to say it's impossible that that'll change in the future. Maybe something comes out in the future and it's like, well, actually we found this chemical that makes people feel this way and this can be changed or whatever, right? Yeah.
Okay. So I've got two. So one thing. If someone comes in and says Martians are sending me messages, you don't start at 50% for that.
No, my prior for that is going to start out much lower. Yeah.
Zero.
No, never zero. Close. I think a really important thing for humans is you never start off with a 0% probability. Your a priori probability. It's always going to be at least like
closer.
Yeah, it'll be low. It'll be like 0.1% or something. Yeah, 0.01%, but never zero.
So it will be the floor.
Close, yeah.
There's okay. Okay, so that's where I'm at, and that's where I started at. And I think that we both agree you would be doing a disservice to the patient if the patient comes in and says Martians are sending messages. To start at 50%, and then say, well, let's start collecting evidence and see what we find. That would be unethical to do.
For the Martian thing, yeah, probably, because we've got so much other evidence already investigating this stuff in the background. Yeah.
Do you think it's unethical to do that if your internal response, and this is basically an emotional response, is like, that's not fucking true. And you can say it's a logical analysis, you've arrived at this point, but like I'm an atheist, and like, I don't care how many, like, if you talk to a Christian, they'll say, oh, in a week I can show you evidence. And then you're just like, well, no, you can't. You're just going to show me other shit that you made up or shit that you twisted into blah, blah, blah. But from an atheist perspective, I don't fucking care what you say. It's not true.
Damn, I don't think you should think that. I'm a super strong atheist, but I would never say that my, like, probability of existence of God is 0%. I would say it's very, very, very slim. But I could be shown evidence that would convince me otherwise. And even you believe that. Like, if God fucking appeared... No. You do?
No.
Oh, you don't?
If God appeared...
You'd more likely assume you were crazy than not?
Of course.
Do you,
I would assume I was crazy.
If I say, like, epistemic nihilism, does that mean anything to you, or is that, like, a bunch jumble of dumb fucking... Do you believe that like you can ever know the fact of the matter about anything? Right?
Stop proving that I don't know what these words mean.
No, yeah, sorry. I'm well, because I don't want to explain something to you and then you're like, I know that means you're fucking idiot. You're condescending.
I know what you mean, but I think your viewers might not. So
yeah, okay, that's right. Okay, cool. Yeah, okay, sorry. What I'm basically asking is that like I just don't want to explain something like I'm condescending to you. I'm not trying to do that again. Do you believe...
you're being condescending in a different way, and I prefer the first one. I prefer the over-explaining one.
Gotcha. Okay, so
then I can just have a poker face and just wait for you to finish and say, yeah.
Gotcha. My bad. Okay. Basically what I'm asking you is that like, could you know the fact of the matter about anything? Do you think that any particular truth is knowable? Because my next question, what I was going to explore with you, but I think I already know how this is going to end. Because my next question I was going to ask you is like, okay, well, what if 3 other people all saw the same godlike entity? But your response would probably, well, I would assume that all of us are crazy and there was a contagion. And then what if I said that, like, what if 100 people saw it? It feels like your next answer would be like, okay, well, there's either a mass contagion or I'm dead and I'm having like a hallucination or something, or I was drugged and I'm not like seeing anything real. Sounds like that's what you would say, yeah?
I think so. That's where I'm at with the trans issue.
So
I'm like,
my next question on that then basically is that like, do you ever worry that you've established a world, or you've put yourself in kind of a world where there might be true things, but because of the way that you view truth, that it's impossible to convince you of some things that are actually true?
I would say that is a definitional flaw of what I'm telling you about myself. That has to be true. There must be things that are true that I can't be convinced of.
There must be things that are true, but you can't be convinced of those things. Is that okay for you, or do you accept that, or?
I accept that, yeah. I accept that more than...
Why? Why would you want that? That seems kind of bad.
Well, I don't think I can choose this. I think this is just how I'm wired. Okay, there's a social psychology experiment. There's 2 that I want to tell you about that you probably already know. But one,
explain for the
just
audience,
for the audience, right? Okay. So one is they have a 2 lines on a board.
Oh, Ash's line test, or whatever, right?
I don't know what the fuck it's called.
Oh, never mind.
Line A is longer than line B. Is this what you're talking about?
The social pressure, getting somebody to say that the line.
Yeah. Okay, so you have one test subject per classroom. And every other person in the classroom says the short one is longer. And they have to raise their hands one at a time. And they say, which one's longer? And every other person in the room says line B is longer, when it's clearly line A. And then you see how easy is it to get the subject to agree with the rest of the class, even though that's clearly not true. And most people go along with it.
I don't think it's most, but it's a surprisingly high number. I think it was like 38% or something, but it's a lot. Like when the answer is clearly wrong, you can get more than a third of people to say that like the other answer is a social pressure. Yeah, it is a surprise.
And then the other one is the smoke coming into the room test. Have you heard of this one?
I don't know this one.
So you have a bunch of people answering like logic questions. Okay, and there's only one participant. And in the middle of the test, they start pumping smoke under the room. And then you just see obviously the person looks around and starts getting antsy in their seat, but everyone else just pretends they don't notice. And then you see how long it takes them to say like, hey, there's smoke coming into the room. And it's like, again, surprisingly a much longer time than if other people are also reacting and saying, oh, what's that? So... yes, it is a flaw of mine that there are things that are true that I cannot ever be convinced of. But the plus side is that I will never be in that 38% or whatever who says line B is longer than line A.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is. I used to be very religious, and then I became an atheist as I went through high school. So this is kind of the classic challenge. I'm just curious how you resolve this. So I accept that there are people that think like that. And normally I apply this to religious people. But what I don't accept is that can be a reasonable way to live. Because my next question is, what do you do if you come up against somebody that feels the same way, but they have a different interpretation of reality that necessitates like a harm to you? How do you ever resolve disputes between 2 people like that? So let's say that they come up to you and let's say that they they know that they're living in the Matrix. They just do. They know 100%. They're totally convinced of it. Nothing you say can change their mind about it. And they also think that you're about to turn into Agent Smith, so they have to kill you, right? When you start to get societies full of people that accept that they can't really truly know anything, but they're still going to act on those convictions and give societal prescriptions for what we should do, how do you resolve those differences between people? I'm just curious. This is a really hard question. Also, I don't expect you to like, oh, you just do this. But that's kind of like always my issue.
I think democracy is a good one. Like if everybody shares the same delusion, then that's fine. There's nothing you can't do anything about that anyway.
Well, sure, but we're having a conversation over not how the world is, but how we want it to be. Because right now, my understanding is you're not happy with democracy, right? Yeah.
Let me explain. If a chunk of people believe that you're going to turn into Agent Smith, but it's not most people, then it's going to be illegal to kill me. So we have cops and laws to prevent people from doing that. So they know, well, I'm supposed to kill Max, but I shouldn't because I can't. Someone will stop me, or if I do, I'll get thrown in jail, and then eventually all the Matrix people will either end up in jail, or they'll do what most religious people do now, which is say like, yeah, the book says I'm supposed to kill that person, but god damn it, I want to, get home for dinner, so I'm not going to.
Okay.
But we use democracy and the law to say, yeah, you can believe what you want to believe, but if you act on it, like, you're out of society. And now if you have a super religious society, like with Sharia law, then most people are either pretending to believe or do believe in whatever, and then that just becomes the law. And that makes sense to me. I guess I don't like it. But yeah, so my answer to your question is democracy, and just telling people like, you don't have to agree with me. I feel this way about white supremacists.
Sure.
I'm like, you don't have to believe that I'm like not an evil Jew. It's fine for you to think that. I don't agree with the whole like punch Nazis or force them to think what I think thing. But I don't want you to be in charge of the laws.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the problem is we're not having a conversation over what society is. We're having a conversation over what society should be. Because right now it seems like we're moving in a direction where democracy disagrees with you, because people seem to be making way more concessions to trans people than what you personally are comfortable with, right? So you're trying to argue against right now the democratic will of the people using your own kind of like existence that you yourself said is in some ways unfalsifiable, unverifiable. Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with what you said before, that the rubber band thing, we need people to push back against everything. And I don't want trans people to stop doing what they're doing. If you're trans and if that's what you believe is going to make you happy, then I want you to do what you think is best for you. And if you're a trans advocate, I want you to do what you think is best for trans people. What I'm arguing against is, one, I think some people are going along with this for their own personal selfish reasons, and they don't believe they're doing what's best for trans people, and I think that's wrong, and I want to ask them to stop doing that. And two, I want to fulfill the role that you're describing earlier of, I think it's going too fast, and I don't want people to agree with me. I'm not out to try to get everybody to think like me. It's not like the Matrix thing in the sense that like I would want that person to just change their mind. I don't feel that way about trans people. I might be wrong. And some of the stuff we're talking about really comes down to philosophy, and like it does come down to semantics and the utility of the definitions we're going to arrive at. I don't want everybody to share my definitions. I just want people to think about it. And I don't want to control the government. I don't want to say you can't teach this in school. If most people believe this, then make it the law, give them whatever protections they want. That's fine. I do believe in democracy, and I'm not trying to argue against the will of the people. I'm trying to be that nagging voice, or just not nagging voice. I'm trying to create a comfortable space for uncomfortable feelings and uncomfortable conversations that in the conservative pushback, the Ben Shapiro, like, I'm gonna mock you and call you stupid and crazy in front of all your classmates and then cut your mic off. Like, the conservative pushback against this is very unkind. It comes from a similar place that we were talking about earlier, where Ben Shapiro woke up in a woman's body tomorrow, he would kill himself. It's not what I'm advocating for. And I think what I'm trying to present here is missing, of like, maybe there's a nice way to say no to this, and maybe we're capitulating too much, and we need to look in the mirror and make sure we're all doing and saying what we really believe.
Sure. I don't think I'd necessarily disagree with that. I mean, as I said earlier, like the natural tension, everything is good and fine. I guess it just comes down to like, how do we determine which statements we believe are true and which statements we don't believe are true, like about relating to trans or whatever. Because it sounds like you have like a collection of experiences that you feel give you a pretty what? Yeah, super.
So it will supersede all else. And so I think we probably agree more with Black Lives Matter, right? Like protests are good and riots are bad.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Right? But for some reason, lots of people are uncomfortable making that distinction.
Yeah.
But to say, stop fucking rioting, you're not helping anything, is seen as kind of a racist, like we agree that progressives have become open with regards to violence in the street.
Say that one more time?
Progressives are overly permissive to rioting and violence.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Right.
Because it doesn't happen where
but even that, a progressive would say, well, so a black neighborhood is no more dangerous than a white. How could you, like, to the point where you're starting to erase the experiences of black people and even their problems, and how carefully and you're.
Yeah, I understand. I've said this a lot, that sometimes people are so quick to try to get rid of some things that they forget that they're conceding ground on arguments that they don't want to concede ground on, that they shouldn't actually. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just think that the right with Black Lives Matter is not providing the empathetic. I mean, no one is. The tension in like these political discussions is almost entirely empathy free on both sides now about everything. So yeah, I just wanted to say that to clarify that I'm not trying to squish the will of trans people or progressives, and I'm not trying to advocate for the conservative. You ranting about how black people don't have fathers or fix your neighborhood or get a job or whatever, just prescriptive, dismissive, unempathetic, shit. I don't want to do that to trans people, and I'm not advocating for that.
Sure. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Well, okay. I don't know where you want to go from here.
I don't know either. Wasn't much of a debate. It was almost like we had a conversation.
Well, I mean, that was your goal, right?
That was my goal. I've accomplished it.
Okay, well, congratulations. Good job.
Thanks. Good job to you too, man.
Wow, thanks a lot. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, any final words, any parting thoughts, anything you want to leave us with, or any other questions, thoughts, concerns, comments? No, just that, don't punch Nazis. You empathize with people who you think hate you the most, who you hate the most. That's all. Oh, okay. Actually, here, you bring up the Nazis, and we talk about trans people, so it's all kind of relevant. Here's something that's interesting. There's something called, I'll explain this for the audience, because obviously you know about this.
Yeah.
There's something called the paradox of intolerance. So an issue or the paradox of tolerance, actually. So one issue you run into is liberals will say something along the lines of like, we should tolerate all points of view. But what do you do when you tolerate somebody who doesn't tolerate your point of view? And people are worried that there might be a paradoxical thought there where if you are tolerant of everybody, eventually there are going to be people that make it to areas of power where they use that power in a way to become intolerant. And now because you were tolerant of them, you've basically lost yourself. So this is relevant when we talk about trans people. So
Yeah.
I don't know about your life. My life is definitely cushy now, like with how I exist. There's not really that much in the world that's very threatening to me. Regardless of political systems, whatever, there's not much that's gonna fuck with me unless something like personal happens. You know, systems.
I get a lot of death threats.
Sure, yeah, I get those too, but people on Twitter are whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that there might be trouble sometimes? So when you talk about like, oh, you know, just be chill, understand people disagree, like that's cool. Do you think that that might be more difficult when somebody feels like the stakes are significantly higher when it comes to the conversation that's happening?
Yeah, that's why I said don't punch Nazis, because I'm a Jew. So I get to play the, like, you know, family died in the Holocaust, and I would be right there with them card to make it have a little more weight, I think.
What if there was a Nazi political party in the United States that had, like, say, 25% favorability? They weren't like the majority, but there was like a sizable chunk of people. Would you ever look at that kind of sideways and be like, or do you just like?
I would be super concerned about it, but I would be, again, free speech and democracy have to come first. Do you know about the case of the neo-Nazis wanting to march through the Jewish community in Skokie, Illinois?
Yeah, it was a really famous ACLU case. Yeah.
Yes, and the Jews at the ACLU represented their right to free speech, and the ACLU often takes hyper progressive stances that I disagree with, but I'll always give them credit for that. That's how I feel. I would be disagreeing with the Nazis' views and fighting for their right to express.
How would you feel if there were like pogroms going on where you've got these Nazi people in office and now like Jewish stores and places are being destroyed and shit, and they still want to go out and give speeches and stuff? Like maybe your own house hasn't been destroyed or anything, but now like you're starting to see violence against Jewish people. Like, do you still kind of have the same blasé attitude towards it? Where it's like, oh, you know,
you could put a shotgun in my mouth, and I'm still not going to give up the First Amendment. Like yes, I still believe this. I'm willing to sacrifice quite a lot for.
Do you think that most
freedom.
people would have that stance, or
No.
Because I think when you talk about like
that's why
okay.
That's why it's so hard to alter the Constitution, because most people don't even believe in free speech for other people. They believe in it for themselves. So we have to protect whatever we think is the most abhorrent, destructive views. Well, first of all, I don't think punching Nazis stops them. I think that actually might help them.
Potentially, but that's boring. Let's not think about that.
Especially like with somebody like Trump. Like I really don't like Trump.
Sure.
I think he's kind of a Nazi. Not in necessarily his beliefs about race, but his authoritarian, just wanting to control everything.
For sure.
Right?
Maybe he's definitely kind of like a fashy dude. Maybe not full on, but like yeah, for sure. Okay, I can agree with that.
He would go if he could go full on. He would.
Absolutely.
He's a probing Nazi. He's not gonna lead the charge, but if somebody says, "Hey, you're the dictator of everything," do you like? Our ideal president, I think, is someone like George Washington, who gets offered power and says, "Nah, that's not a good idea." Trump is not going to do that.
Yeah.
His victimhood is so much of what gives him power. So, one, strategically, I don't think it's good to punch Nazis because they get people feeling sorry for them, and especially now. Anybody who can claim they're a victim is like immediately hoisted up, retweeted the fuck out of or whatever. But ideologically, yeah, I don't think punching people stops them from believing what they're believing. I think you have to talk to them. So I don't even agree that it's not even a trade-off for me. Like I don't think if you start assassinating the leaders of the political party you're talking about or throwing them in jail, I don't think that helps. I think that just makes things worse anyway. So.
Yeah, sure, but that's the boring part. Because I largely agree with you. But what I'm more interested in, because for the Jewish thing, it's one thing, but when you look at people like trans people or maybe other minority groups, I think some of the issues that these people feel is that while you and I can have an incredibly detached and dispassionate conversation about these things, it's because nothing is really at stake for us that much, aside from things that like, I don't want to say transgender women, fuck that, But at the end of the day, it's not super destroying our lives. Whereas the people on the other end of the
I
conversation,
feel that it is.
not nowhere near as much as it's impacting the other people who may or may not get treatment or medication or something, right?
I think the impact is less immediate, but I feel like I think this is part of what I'm asking of the audience, to empathize with the people pushing back against this beyond. It's not just I don't feel like saying this. It feels like a visceral violation of my rights.
Well, here's a question. Do you think that whether or not a gay person could be married or free of judgment in society, do you think that there is at much at risk for them as a person that's uncomfortable with gay people in society?
I think the individual has more risk, but the other people think they're going to go to hell.
Well, they're going to go to hell whether the gay people are going to go to hell. I don't know if really feel like you're going to hell if other people around them are gay, right?
I think there are some religious people who think that our society is going to
Lead more people to go to hell.
Our kids are going to be in concentration camps. We'll get smote from the earth. I do think that there are religious people who believe strongly that something very bad is going to happen to them if they allow gay marriage.
Okay.
I just don't. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and like practically, I don't believe that. I don't agree with them. But from their point of view, they're not just doing it for no reason. Like, they're actually really upset.
No, I'm sure they have their reasons. Yeah, I know.
And I think they're approaching that.
Even if I grant all of that, even if I grant every single thing you're saying that they do believe it, right? We can still say at the end of the day, though, there's a difference between this kind of like theological harm that maybe you're gonna versus like my life right now is materially fucked and negatively impacted versus whether or not you think your future progeny is going to heaven or hell. No.
No, I don't agree with your dismissiveness. Also, you're comparing me to a Nazi.
Wait, how am I comparing you to a Nazi?
Well, you're in this example. I am the oppressor, right?
Well, no. I'm just saying that in general.
For trans people, the way trans people look at me is they say, "This guy's spreading these ideas. He wants to take our medications away. I am the Nazi in this example, right?"
Well, I mean, it's not like a direct one-to-one comparison. I'm just saying that in terms of this
Okay.
I'm saying that our relationship to this conversation is that of a relatively detached and unaffected
I'm just trying
party.
to fill out the analogy. In this analogy, I am the oppressor of trans people spewing my hateful ideas, right?
Well, that's a really loaded way to say it.
I'm not going to freak out.
No, I'm not. I don't. But that's not even necessary. I'm just saying that like we're having a conversation. We can. How about this? We can move off of this conversation. We can talk about abortion. So there's not as loaded.
No, I don't want to.
So like when it comes to abortion, whether or not abortions are legal or illegal.
With you.
Yeah.
I don't agree with you. I hate what you're saying, man.
What is that? That some people are affected more by this conversation than we are?
That you can dismiss the feelings.
I'm not saying we dismiss them, but I'm saying that there's a clear. It's not there, but there's a weight between one and the other.
I don't think you should weigh them.
But you have to.
I don't agree. I disagree with you strongly. I think that if I believe that my neighbor, okay, say every couple of months, one of my neighbors takes a baby, puts it on their front lawn, and cuts its head off with a pair of garden shoes.
Okay.
And I'm like, hey, can somebody stop this? I can't take it anymore. And then all these women come out and say, well, you know what? You'll never give birth, so you don't get to have a say in this. And I'm like, well, you don't care. You don't care about the baby. I do. I am being hurt by this more than you are. And they're like, no, oh, yeah? Well, I was going to have to raise this baby, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you're cutting the heads off in front of me, man. I can't deal with this. I would say in that example, I think that is how some pro-life people feel.
Sure, and I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying that you can't have a feeling about it at all, or that it doesn't affect you at all.
You're saying it should not be. You're saying it should be.
I'm saying that there's a different. Yes,
when we're
the weighting is there.
We're doing the big scale of like, okay, so.
Here I can give a real life example of this. You and your girlfriend, are you still dating?
Yeah.
Okay. There might be a.
You gotta wear her fucking shirt if we weren't dating.
Maybe you're wearing a shirt because she died, and I was about to say something really stupid. Okay, I don't know. Fuck. Your shirt says like "save somebody" on it. Maybe she had fucking breast cancer. Now she's dead, and that's
save Shayla. No, the shirt is save her from me.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
That's what I. Okay, so yes, I am checking.
That's what I assumed.
Okay,
go ahead.
So, let's say that you two are having a conversation about where you want to go to eat. Now, let's say that she suggests, I want to go to an Indian restaurant, and you don't really want to go to an Indian restaurant. What?
This is perfect. This
Okay.
is what happens.
Gotcha.
She likes Indian food,
Sure.
and I hate it.
Yeah, and you're like, I want to go to a steakhouse or just get fucking burgers. Who cares, right? Maybe something like that, right? Now, let's say that it's something where like you don't actually care that much. You'll eat Indian food, it's whatever. But let's say she feels really strongly about it. If I have a relationship, I do have a relationship. If I have a disagreement in my relationship, I'm probably going to bend to the other person if it's something they feel really strongly about. And
But what if they always feel really strongly about it?
well, then we have to get into the validity of how that issue impacts them.
And you become erased.
Well, then you have to be careful. Well, I don't think that that's the case here. Now, if trans people started to say that like we can't have 3D graphics anymore in video games, then maybe. But
Fuck them.
yeah, then fuck them. Okay. But we're not at that point yet. Thankfully, the trans agenda hasn't gotten all that far up, so we don't have to worry about that yet.
Well, when you put it that way, it seems entirely reasonable.
Exactly. But I'm just saying that like other people are. There are going to be things where you do have an emotional stake, but other people.
You got to make some kind of.
Other people are going to be affected by things more than you are. That we should probably be able to agree on that, right?
I don't.
Abortion will affect women more than men, even if men can have a very strong statement in it. And I am super sympathetic towards men that have strong feelings about it.
I don't agree with that. I agree with that in statistically on average, but I do not agree that every single trans person feels more strongly about this than I do.
Probably not every single one, but the majority of them.
I believe I've talked to trans people who are less passionate about this issue and actually might even feel less impacted by it than I do.
There probably are some, but if we speak in averages, because we have to, because that's how society works, is in averages, right? The average trans person is probably
That's a big leap.
Well, no, we have to, because we can't.
I don't agree. And I think we shouldn't speak in averages.
But we can
I
have
think
any.
that's racist.
No, to have any meaningful conversation about policy, we have to speak in averages because we talk to whole groups of people.